Welcome everyone to the Seattle Southside Chambers Public Safety event hosted in partnership with the Burien Police Department and the City of Burien. My name is Andrea Ray, and on behalf of the Chamber, thank you for making the time to be with us today. This copyrighted webinar is presented by the Seattle Southside Chamber of Commerce and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form without the express written consent of the Chamber. We'll get started here with some Zoom housekeeping, followed by 3 presentations: Self-Care and Wellness with Cassandra, Crime Prevention with Chief Bowe, and Lead with Aaron. Afterwards, we'll enjoy an audience Q&A session during which you'll be able to ask questions, and then we'll end the event at 8:30. For those of us joining us on Zoom, this is a Zoom webinar. You are able to type questions to our panelists in the chat or by using the Q&A function. You are also able to turn on closed captions. Just click the CC button at the bottom of your screen and select Show Subtitles. If you are joining us via Facebook, please type your question into the comments section under the Facebook Live broadcast, and we will do our best to get to those to our guest speakers as well. Interpretation services in Spanish are also available. For Español, marque Español por interpretación. Gracias. Because of this, we ask that you choose your preferred language on desktop. You can do this by selecting the interpretation button on the features menu and select either English or Spanish. On mobile, you can do this by selecting the More button and then Language Interpretation before choosing English or Spanish. Again, por Español, marque Español por interpretación. Gracias. Thank you to our partners for being able to provide Spanish language interpretation. The Chamber is grateful to be able to host this opportunity for our community to connect, learn, and engage. In 2019, we hosted a similar event. Back then, we were able to gather in person and could enjoy coffee and conversation. Unfortunately, the pandemic has made that impossible at this time. We encourage everyone to mask up and get vaccinated so that we can come back to community outreach and engagement in person soon. Until we can do that, we appreciate you joining us through the Zoom platform. The issues facing our community are not unique to us. As an independent nonprofit dedicated to economic development and community engagement, serving our community for generations, we have always believed very strongly in the power to come together to find solutions to all the complex problems our community faces. We were founded on that belief: stronger together. We hear and see the concerns of our community, stand in solidarity with our members and businesses, and want to focus on finding solutions together. Public safety is economic development, and it's paramount that we collaborate as a community to do all we can to keep our community safe and thriving. Thank you again for being here. We are broadcasting on Facebook, and we are recording as well, so that those that aren't able to join our event can still watch and learn later at their convenience. With that, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Cassandra Jackson of Sound. I know some of our audience members might not think that public safety starts first with the individual and personal wellness, but it truly does. How we approach every situation in our lives, how aware we are of our surroundings, and how we interpret situations or are able to de-escalate situations all centers first on us as individuals. So we are really grateful that Cassandra could be here with us today to talk about personal wellness and resiliency. She will offer insight and advice about self-care and wellness practices to ensure that your own personal well-being, and by extension, our community, is safer and more stable. Cassandra is part of Sound's management team and heads up the organization's South region. She is a trained, licensed behavioral healthcare professional and has been in the field for approximately 40 years. With the last 26 years as a member of Sound, Jackson is a dual graduate of Howard University, obtaining her BS in psychology and her master's in rehabilitation counseling. Throughout her professional career, she has worked in many settings: community outpatient, residential, and inpatient settings in various states prior to landing at Sound. Jackson has a passion for issues that impact our community and has spent the majority of her professional career working to support disaffected populations. She is a staunch proponent of recovery, believing that we are all on our own wellness journey as our bodies, mind, and spirit seek to gain balance and stability. Cassandra, thank you so much for being with us here this evening. Take it away.
Good evening, everyone, and I'm very happy to be here. I would like to thank the Andrea and for having me here, because this is something very near and dear to my heart about self-care and wellness. It is something that I attempt to practice for my own personal well-being. And as Andrea said, wellness in our community starts with us as an individual. COVID-19, the past year, has been an extraordinary year for all of us. It's been full of challenges. Oh, next slide. I'm sorry, I'm supposed to say that, right? It's been full of challenges. It has impacted our communities. It has impacted our businesses, our state, and our nation. Many of us are dealing with issues that are overwhelming, taxing, and causing us to burn out and to feel like, is this going to end? Every time you read the newspaper, you're like, okay, Fauci, is it going to end anytime soon? Because we'd like to get back to normal as much as possible. Next slide. And while we are attempting to put COVID in a place where it doesn't impact our life, we have done things like social distancing and isolation and quarantining. Those, while it's been good for COVID, it's not necessarily good for our own well-being and mental health. And we have seen a lot of behavioral impacts in the community as a result of the isolation, the loneliness, the being cut off from our friends and family, lifestyle changes. People have lost employment, economic losses, as well as a lot of prolonged grief. Next slide, please. This is information from the Department of Health, just to share with you how huge the problem is and why it is a good topic to discuss. There are upwards of about 3 million of us Washingtonians who may experience significant mental health symptoms in the next 2 to 5 months or over the past year. There are also a third of people who have experienced COVID who are experiencing neurological or mental health disorders, according to recent research. Depression and anxiety and acute stress are number one, are the most prevalent disorders that we're seeing, or issues that are coming to the forefront. And I don't want people to think, well, okay, I have a mental disorder. Depression is something that, given the current pandemic, that will impact all of us. Anxiety, because we have anxiety about the future. What's going to happen? Yes, people are getting vaccinated, but then you hear there are a lot of people still not getting vaccinated. All of these information, children not vaccinated, there's still a lot of fear. There's still a lot of anxiety. Will we recover from this is really what people are asking themselves. And that kind of fear can stoke anxiety. It can make people sad. Next slide, please. So looking at this, I don't want to get too much into the science, but SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration in our nation's capital, they have looked at when major disasters happen. And when major disasters happen, and they've charted what happens during that disaster. And so if you look at this, the important thing to take from this is that we're a year into COVID, and you would expect that we would be starting to have recovery. However, because of the protracted nature of COVID, and we just got the vaccine, we are pretty much still in the disillusionment phase, and we haven't come out of recovery yet and working toward more wellness as a society. Now, this is as a society, not just us individually. And in the past, SAMHSA has looked at things like what happened after 9/11, after major hurricanes, and other events that have happened in our society. So along with COVID, on top of COVID, we've had forest fires that have impacted some people. We've had our civic unrest and strife. Those things also on top of COVID makes us really not at the point at which we are ready to move towards the recovery phase. So we're still in disillusionment. And during disillusionment, it can be very uncomfortable for people. I don't have to speak. There's probably a lot more personal strife. When you read the newspaper, you hear about, this is kind of negative, and I like to stay away from negative things, but you hear about shootings, you hear about police involvement on a lot of different levels. And I'm quite sure Chief Bowe will talk about that later. But so with all of the COVID, we have individuals who are feeling fearful of society. What's gonna happen? So we got more fear, people just erupt. You have car accidents, you have road rage, you have a lot of things going on. And part of the disillusionment phase, and this is a little sciencey, what I've read and what is talked about at the State Department of Health when we have our meetings as providers, is that our prefrontal cortex, which is our executive function, has not been working like it should have been, because our limbic system, which is the fight or flight syndrome, and you've all heard of that, has been more active, and it's been active for over a year. You wear your mask, you go somewhere and you wonder, okay, these people don't have on a mask. Should I stick around? Should I say something? Should I run? So we have lots of episodes and instances where we're dealing with fear, we're dealing with anger, we're dealing with frustration, and it's led to burnout, for all of us. If you run your business, you have your employees that you have to be mindful of, as well as your customer, and trying to balance the needs of both your customer and your employees at the same time. And that can prove to be challenging. I know that very well, because we at Sound, while we're a behavioral health agency, and this is our expertise, we still have to balance the needs of our clients with the needs of our employees and with the needs of the community. Some of the common symptoms that show that we're in the, next slide, sorry. During this disillusionment phase, it can be uncomfortable and challenging. Resources become limited. People feel abandoned. More and more people need mental health treatment and services, or someone to talk to. And sometimes the services are not what they may expect in some cases, because we're also experiencing a decrease in people applying for positions with us. So our staff are being pushed to their limits in terms of serving people, and we believe in serving people well. And so it gets uncomfortable for all of us trying to juggle everything. Next slide. Sometimes people can tend to have sadness, depression, grief. And one thing about grief, people think of grief as static. We go through several stages of grief throughout, and with COVID, we have not been able to grieve properly. Many of us may have lost loved ones, family members, employees, team members, colleagues, and we have not been able to grieve properly because the ceremonies that we have not happened. Likewise, we can't celebrate in the same way with things like graduation, weddings, anniversary, birthdays, all of our normal ways to celebrate and refresh ourselves have been kind of moved away from us. And so that burnout has worry, sadness, difficulty concentrating. You get easily distracted. Next slide. You can have difficulty sleeping. You can have changes in your appetite, energy, and interest. Sometimes people feel things as physical symptoms, body pains, headaches, digestive issues. If you have chronic health conditions, they could worsen over time. Then you either overeat or undereat. And people are using substances at a greater degree than before, alcohol, tobacco, and other substances. Those are increasing. And if you have other issues, health issues, and or mental health issues, the substances don't help. They may magnify or make the situation or compound a situation that the person is already in. Next slide. So one of the things I want to ask people, and this is what you answer for yourself, is, and not you don't have to share it with anybody, but as you ask yourself, have I had reduced interest or hair loss or something physical related to my health? Have I had skin irritations like eczema, dermatitis? Have I had increased depression or anxiety? Have I had memory issues? You know, not just walking in the kitchen and thinking, oh, I don't remember what I came for, but just ongoing lapses of memory. Have you used substances or misused substances? And when I say substances, I don't just mean illegal drugs. We can use food as a drug by overeating. You know, that tub of ice cream can be calling you sometimes just to eat it all at one time. And so with that, I see a lot of people have checked, of the people who responded, an increase in depression or anxiety. Well, I want to tell you, you're not alone. You're really, really not alone. And we will come out of this. I can't tell you when or where or how. I'm not that expert. We will come out of this, and most of us will become resilient and we will recover. There is hope. That's one of the things we try to give our clients at our agency is hope. Hope for the future, because I know it sometimes looks very dark. And resilience is really about assessing where I'm at today and where I want to be tomorrow, okay? And you can foster resilience by focus, oh, next slide, okay, since we ended polling, the polling part. One of the things, as I talked about, is to properly assess where you are so you can develop resilience. You can increase resilience and your recovery by focusing on your connections with others. And I know some of those connections are not in person. They can't be in person all the time now. And some of it is over Facebook or over Zoom or whatever platform you're on. But having those connections with your coworkers, with your community, with your family and friends are very vital to help building a person's resilience. And it's something that can be taught. Okay, next slide, I'm sorry. Okay, it's also something is defining and redeveloping your sense of purpose and adapting and being flexible. Some of the things you can do is, this is an uncomfortable time and it's hard. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I know sometimes that's hard, but getting uncomfortable with that, with your discomfort. Yes, social distancing, quarantining, masks, all of that is uncomfortable, but get comfortable with that. Give yourself some grace. It's something I really like to do myself, for myself, give myself some grace, because some days it may feel like I'm not doing everything I need to do. But given the times that we're in, giving yourself grace about that. Establish boundaries at work, but also establish those boundaries with our family and friends. One time I was in a training and a meeting, and someone made a statement that I took to heart because it is very true. No is a complete sentence. Do you hear me? No is a complete sentence. You don't have to do everything. You can't now. So make small, achievable goals, very, very small. They don't have to be large. Sometimes engaging in mindless activities is helpful. You know, get out in nature. And now since we have sunshine and blue skies, it's every day you could get out, even if it's for 5 minutes. Get out in the sunshine, breathe air. Because if you're outside, as the Center for Disease Control says, and you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear masks. So get outside and breathe. Take a deep breath, stretch, walk. Focus on the present, not the future. Practice gratitude. Think about the things in your life that you're grateful for. I know we all have something to be grateful for in the midst of all the challenges. For instance, sometimes I wake up and just say, I'm grateful just to wake up and the sun is shining. That may seem small, but that's a way to start gratitude. Because the more you're grateful, the less you focus on the things that are going wrong. Re-examine your habits. Develop new routines or adjust your routines. Be mindful of the social media and the media information that you take in, because it can be overwhelmingly negative. And so sometimes you can say, I'm only going to listen to the news for 5 minutes today, and I want the top stories and not all the other things. Again, stay connected with friends and family. And I really do like to limit my complaint time. You can limit complaint time to 2 minutes. It's real easy. List your complaints, but then list the things you're grateful for and see how the balance comes out. Try to stay mentally active. Next slide. I keep forgetting that, I'm sorry. Try to stay mentally active, whether that's a puzzle, books, no, go back, sorry. Reach out for help, cook healthy meals, designate a quiet space where you have boundaries. So you come home from work or you're working from home, designate a space that's yours that you can have 5 minutes of quiet. And remember, you can say no, because no is a complete sentence, okay? Some of the things you can ask yourself as you're assessing yourself every day. Next slide. And I'm trying to rush through this because I'm trying to get to the end. You can ask yourself, are you eating healthy? Did I eat a healthy meal today? Am I moving, exercising? And when I say exercise, it doesn't have to be exercise. You know, at the parking lot at the grocery store, did I park at the back of the parking lot and walk to the store? That's a little exercise. It doesn't have to be big. Are you getting enough sleep? And I am a big proponent of good, restful sleep. Trying to make sure you get that sleep in so you're refreshed for the next day. Practice self-compassion, you know. Ask yourself, have I been negative this week? Have I engaged in negative behavior? Again, did I practice gratitude today or at least one day this week? Did I reach out to a family member? If I didn't, reach out to a family member. Did I set healthy boundaries? These are questions you can ask yourself on a daily basis. to see if you're in a good space and if you need to take time to practice self-care. Now, in the midst of this, next slide, I listed some resources because I would be remiss in not bringing up resources in case someone has someone who is truly, truly struggling, whether it's yourself or someone in your life. I have posted the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. There's some other hotlines that people can use and call, because help is there if you need it. And don't be afraid to reach out for help. That is what the resources are for. So if you're feeling that you're close to the edge or your family member is close to the edge, find someone to talk to, and some of these resources will do that for you, okay? But I don't like to end on a negative note because I always like to end positive. Mindfulness is a activity that we practice a lot, and we work with our clients on being mindful. And it's a type of where you focus on the moment. It involves breathing techniques and other relaxing, other practices to relax and reduce stress. I even do it sometimes, even when things are swirling around me, sometimes I take that moment to practice being mindful of the moment. Next slide. It improves our wellness, our well-being. It improves our mental health and physical health. There's studies that have shown that it alleviates, it sometimes lower blood pressure, it treats heart disease, all of these things that come from stress. And sometimes for some people, improves sleep. It also improves mental health, and we do practice this with some of our clients. Next slide. Part of this, how it works, we're sensing in the present moment rather than rehashing the past or focusing on the future. And that is key to relaxing, is in this present moment, can I take a moment just to relax and be with myself and to calm my mind and to calm my body. Next slide. We're gonna play a little, this is off of YouTube, but it's calm. It's a 1-minute meditation, just 1 minute. And you can get the Calm app. There's also Headspace. There are things out there that can help people relax if they would like to relax. So in my last few minutes, could you play the 1-minute meditation?
Close your eyes, and we'll take a few moments to calm your mind and body. Soften your face, your neck, and shoulders. Do your best to fully let go. And turn your attention to the breath, the calming breath, the soothing breath. Take long, slow breaths, full and deep. Breathing in, I am calm. Breathing out, I'm at peace.
Thank you so much.
1 minute, 1 minute, and it doesn't take a lot of time, just 1 minute, and you can find a calm space. I hope you all felt a little bit calmer just by listening to that 1-minute tape, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Cassandra. We really appreciate that. And now our next speaker I'm proud to introduce is Chief Ted Bowe of the Burien Police Department. Chief, take it away.
Good evening, all, and thank you for being here. And special thanks to Andrea for hosting this event. I really appreciate it. And Scott for getting us a live feed as well. Much appreciated. My name is Ted Bowe. I am your police chief, position that I have officially been in as of Saturday for 3 years. So it has been an amazing, fun ride, and I have really fallen in love in Burien. It's been an amazing experience. I do have to start out by telling you a little bit about me. I was born in Wisconsin in the 7th grade. We packed everything up and moved to Seattle because my father got a job out here, and relocated to Federal Way, where I went to Federal Way High School growing up in South King County. I have to be transparent. If there's any Cougars on here, I apologize for that. I did go to the University of Washington after I left high school, the only university around, go Dogs, and got a business degree. So my degree is actually in business. While I was in college, I worked as a security guard in Crossroads Shopping Center out in Bellevue. And while I was working there, I got to know several of the Bellevue police officers. They invited me to a community police academy, and I went through a 12-week community police academy, and I kind of fell in love with this profession. So I decided to give it a shot, and 22 years later, I'm still here. My history has kind of gone around King County. I started out working patrol in rural areas in North Precinct, North Bend, Carnation, Fall City. I have spent some time in the training unit, designing and developing training for new officers. I have done a lot of work in the community service spectrum, things such as the Police Explorers program, designing a community police academy that we use in SeaTac and Burien, and other areas within that community relation realm. And then I went down to major investigations, and I spent about 2 years working homicides, special assaults, criminal intelligence, and all the components of major investigations before I was selected as your police chief, again, 3 years ago. So a little bit about the Burien Police Department. We are a contract partner with the King County Sheriff's Office. And what that means is that we direct contract for some of our resources, like the number of officers that we have in the city. And then we share some resources that we can get economies of scale by sharing across the county. So I am a King County major by definition, and also your police chief. The city of Burien pays 100% of the cost for 43.8 officers, which are the officers you see in the Burien police uniforms. In addition, we pay for about 7 additional officers that we share across the county. And these are things like major crimes detectives, SWAT team. We also pay for about 12 dispatchers, which is our portion of the communications center. And then we also pay for a lot of overhead things like insurance and training and cars and legal. And we pay for those services only what we use. So we pay just our portion. Instead of paying for an entire legal department, you pay for just the portion that you use. Our patrol, we staff between 3 and 4 patrol officers a shift. Those are what are called our minimum staffing levels. So from midnight to 10 a.m., we staff a minimum of 3 officers. And from 10 a.m. until midnight, we staff a minimum of 4 officers. Now, there is shift overlap and other phenomenons in the schedule that will result in us having more than that number, but that's the minimum number allowed to be on the streets of Burien at any point in time. And we also have 3 detective units. The Burien Crime Reduction Unit, or B Crew, are detectives that focus on building relationships and addressing underlying causes of crime. They're really the collaborative partners in working with entities that are not necessarily law enforcement, but support the public safety spectrum. The Special Emphasis Team are your undercover detectives that work long-term investigations. A lot of times these are things related to violent crime in our community, as well as things like houses that are nexus to criminal behaviors in our community. In Criminal Investigations Division are all of the cases that don't qualify for the major crimes unit downtown, like domestic violence and fraud and elder abuse. They will go to the Criminal Investigations Unit detectives here at the precinct. So the guiding principles here in Burien for your Burien Police Department are building trust, fighting crime, and supporting each other. I want to talk a little bit about what that means. So building trust means that every contact and every interaction we have with people is an opportunity to build trust, not only in ourselves, but also in our profession. That means not just the community member, but also the person we arrest, also the other law enforcement partners, the business community. Every interaction is about that opportunity to build trust in our profession. Fighting crime is the idea that we have to address criminal behaviors in our community. And we also have to look at long-term solutions to reducing crime in our community. So it's fighting crime as both sides of that discussion. And I really fundamentally believe it's a team sport. It's not police are going to solve all crime in our community, but rather we have to find collective ways to reduce crime in our community. And supporting each other is a recognition that if the men and women work in the Burien Police Department aren't supported with training and equipment and quality leadership, what we're going to find is that they're not going to deliver the service you want delivered on the side of the road in order to fight crime and build trust. So it is a three-legged stool where each of these things have to live in some form of balance. So we're going to go through a couple of statistics. In 2019, we officially became an organization that reports our crime in what's called a NIBRS crime reporting system, which means we use standardized crime reporting across basically everybody in the nation at this point, basically. But it does allow us to make direct comparisons to other cities on like crime reporting. So we use the exact same qualifications for what we report for our crime rates and our definitions of what those crimes mean. So this chart is an analysis of the 2019 data. The 2020 data is not out yet, and as soon as it is, I'll update it. But in 2019, our crime rate per 1,000 residents, and I looked at all the communities across South King County, was second behind Normandy Park and pretty much statistically on par with our partners to the south in Des Moines. So we find that the crime rate per 1,000 in our community falls as second statistically. I will say that there is some anomalies that come up with this, that each community is unique, and this in and of itself is not the only piece of data that you can pluck out of the sky. A great example of that is Tukwila. Tukwila has an enormous population in the mall and in their hotel communities, and not a huge residential population. So it makes their number look much higher than it probably is, and it's not fair to use that as a comparison in some metrics. I also want to point out our officers per 1,000. That's how many officers are contracted to work in our city. What you'll see is we are by far the least staffed police agency in South King County. That includes other agencies that contract with the sheriff's office. You'll also see on the last column is our cost per resident. We have the lowest cost per resident of any policing entity in South King County. What I like to show with this slide is that it's the efficiency of what we do. We are effective and efficient and extremely lean in what we do related to policing. One of the other factors that's not captured in this slide is calls per officer. And we did an analysis within King County of all of our partner cities, and officers in Burien have more calls per officer than any other officer in King County. So the load on those officers is substantial. So over the period of time that we did some research, we actually went back to 2011, I believe, with the calls for service analysis. And what we saw was a really steep climb in calls for service or dispatch calls for service in the city over the period of 2011 to 2017. And now since 2017, more or less our load or our growth in calls for service has stabilized. There's some slight anomalies in there, but it functionally is about the same. So where are our calls? Our calls for service, when we hotspot map them, are in the downtown business core, which is where you see the reds and yellows on your map. And then they follow our main thoroughfares, which is the blue line kind of going up to the left side there is representative of Ambom. And the blue splotches kind of going up the middle of the map there where it says N2 is representative of First Avenue. So our calls for service tend to follow our main thoroughfares and then be very hubbed up in the downtown business core. Neighborhoods in our city generally have very little calls for service. Most of our calls are on those thoroughfares in our business district. And as I talked about our staffing levels earlier and when we prioritize our staffing, our calls are how we determine when we prioritize our staffing. So our calls generally are the highest between 10 a.m. and midnight and peak at about 6 o'clock in the afternoon most days. So a little bit about NIBRS stats, a couple different charts here. The one on the top left is your crimes against persons. And I want to point out that these stats are only 2019 and forward. So in 2019 is when we switched to NIBRS, or the National Reporting System, which makes our stats from before that not directly comparable to our stats after that point. So the reason why I only grabbed the stats from this point forward is it would be very confusing to overlap two different data analysis tools that view the statistical, view the statistics differently. So what you'll see on the left, our crimes against persons chart is statistically we're roughly equal across all 3 years. We have actually seen over time, as we look at violent crime has trended downward over time in the city of Burien. The bottom right is the crimes against property summary. And what you see on that is a slight upward trend in the data year over year. There is one weird anomaly in there, that big, huge blip in the blue line that represents all of the fraud cases during the state unemployment system fraud. That's what that's representative of, is that big blip there is the state unemployment fraud from last year. I want to cover a little bit of some of the challenges for the Burien Police Department as well as the profession of law enforcement. First thing in Burien is our staffing levels. I talk about our efficiency, and that is a blessing and a curse. Because we run so lean, we have absolutely no extra quote unquote fat to cut. And I'm not talking about my midsection, I'm talking about our service delivery. Last year, the Highline School District elected to cut the school resource officer position that they contract for with the Burien Police Department or the Sheriff's Office. When we cut that, we not only lost the school resource officer, but in times schools aren't in session, we also lost the ability to have an extra officer available for things like downtown patrol. Most of you guys recognize Officer Isaac Arend, who used to be riding his bike around downtown and stuff when school wasn't in session. And that was his ancillary duty that when we cut that position, we lost access to. We currently are carrying 6 vacancies. So remember when I said we have 43.8, we don't really have 43.8 because we're carrying 6 vacancies. That's because the Sheriff's Office has been unable to fill their vacancies as they've gone through attrition. And we have fallen behind on hiring on the Sheriff's side, and they can't fulfill all the contracted vacancies. And that goes to hiring and retention issues. Just like Seattle and other agencies has been widely publicized, a lot of cops have left this profession over the last couple of years, and that has resulted in a difficult time filling those vacancies. Real quick touch on expectations versus reality. A lot of people believe police are the easy button, and if you call us, we can solve all the problems really quick, but there are things that take more time. So we only have certain legal authority. The Constitution only grants us certain legal authorities. And a lot of times people have an expectation that we can go solve something like, I know that person over there got drugs in their house, so just go take them and go arrest them. Well, the Constitution protects you from our ability to do that. So a lot of times we run into this expectation versus reality debate on legal authorities. Also on what's a crime and what's not. There's a lot of things in our society that are uncomfortable or that people don't like, but are not crimes. And oftentimes police are expected to solve things that are not criminal in nature, but are uncomfortable for people to deal with. State v. Blake is a court decision that came out in February that said that the state's drug law, the way it was written, your possession of drug law was unconstitutional. So effective when that decision came out, we had to quit arresting, prosecuting, and seizing all drugs. So somebody in possession of drugs was not committing a crime in the state of Washington because that law did not exist. They have just instituted a new law, which we can talk about down the road here, but they are going to make it a misdemeanor level crime now to possess narcotics in the state of Washington under the new law that I believe is on the governor's desk. And then the Boise decision. The Boise decision is a decision that basically says you can't criminalize the act of being homeless or any of the impacts because somebody is in a housing crisis. So the mere fact of somebody laying down on a sidewalk, the mere fact of somebody sitting on a sidewalk, you can't say that that is an illegal act and you can't arrest somebody because of that. So what Boise did was really scope this into a world where we had to look creatively at how do we support people differently and how do we address some of these issues differently. And then motivation and support. I talked about officers leaving this profession. There's certainly a perception among officers that some of the support for our profession has decreased over the last year, particularly. And that's been very hard for a lot of officers to deal with. It has led to a lot of retirements. It also has led to a lot of officers that are less motivated to go out and do proactive things. Specific responses to the letter we received from the business district, 81 businesses signed on to a letter asking for us to be more conscious of some of the issues in the downtown core. In response to that, we've implemented emphasis patrols, both bicycle and foot patrols. They're 24 hours a day, and not that they're 24 hours all in one day, but that we have shifts in the middle of the night. We have shifts in the early morning. We've tried to have some patrols several days a week in the downtown core. Detectives have adjusted their hours and started coming in at 4 o'clock in the morning to be out early in the morning before most of you guys wake up. We've done additional work with our outreach partners and asked them to really help and support some of the issues in the downtown business core, and they have been amazing. We do have a storefront officer partnership with Discover Burien, which is a grant I applied for last year that allows Officer Mark Hayden to be in downtown Burien on Thursdays from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Every Thursday. And then we really have worked with our partners, Metro, store security at Fred Meyer and Safeway, Department of Corrections, and other entities to help us with some of the issues going on in the downtown core. Crime prevention is key. It starts with you, and I'm going to get really tight on time here, but I'll go quick. Lights are your friend. More lights is a good thing when it comes to crime prevention. Privacy is something that a lot of times people are looking for when they're up to no good. Dark areas, high bushes, things that allow privacy typically lead to criminal behaviors. Pay attention. One of the research items that they've shown in retail is the act of saying hi when somebody enters a store dramatically reduces the level of shoplifting. Paying attention to people and acknowledging their existence actually will reduce the amount of crime. Eye contact, always make eye contact with people, make sure they know that you're paying attention. Lock it up. Locks are your friend. A lot of crimes we deal with are unlocked cars, unlocked businesses, unlocked houses, open garage doors. Lock up your property. Criminals will take the path of least resistance. Don't make things easy. Don't leave doors unlocked. Don't leave cars running to warm up. Don't run into Safeway really quick and leave your car in the parking lot running, those kind of things. And then broken windows. Broken windows is a theory that if you allow disorder to exist, then you'll get more of the same. And what we've seen with this is if a car, vandalism is actually an easier one. If a building sits there with no graffiti on it for 2 years, it will continue to have no graffiti on it until the first person puts graffiti on it. And it will be covered in graffiti within moments because everybody will build off of seeing the acceptance of that. So the broken windows theory is you have to clean up and deal with crime immediately to prevent the multiplication of more crime. And I'm going to lead into Aaron's presentation. One of the things that is very important to me is that we not only work in the moment, but we work long-term. So how do we actually impact crime rates in the long term is not always the act of taking somebody to jail today, but also solving the underlying causes that led to that behavior in the long run. So we truly believe in this team sport concept of fighting crime and that we all have to be working collaboratively. I have a list of some of the partners and programs that we're involved with there, including Link, which you're going to hear about in a little bit. But I want to give you a real quick story before I get cut off. And it is the Jane Doe story, which was the moment that this all clicked for me. Jane Doe is somebody who was unhoused in our community as of 2014. Before 2014, she has a couple of minor interactions with law enforcement and functionally not a lot of other criminal behavior. Since she became homeless, we have booked her into jail 25 times. We have written 32 different trespass cases, trespassing her from businesses. She has spent 43 days in the King County Jail and 167 days in the SCORE jail. She's cost the city of Burien just in booking costs over $48,000. And she still has all the same underlying issues that lead to these things in the first place. And she's an example that I like to talk about where we have to figure out a way to solve the underlying issues that are leading to the behaviors. It's not a matter of not arresting her. She's been arrested. It's not a matter of not serving jail time. She has served jail time. It's a matter of the underlying behavioral health issues are still present. And until we can address those, we can't break that cycle of booking her into jail and having her in jail for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks and coming back out to the same behaviors. So with that said, I'm going to lead you to our harm reduction principle partner, the LEAD program, which is a program I am a huge fan of here in the city of Burien. And I have probably give Andrea the honor of introducing Aaron. So thank you very much. I'll be here for questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chief Bowe. And yes, Aaron Burkhalter is the lead project manager. LEAD stands for Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Program. He works in Burien, White Center, and West Seattle. His role provides support for the program in Burien, where he is also a resident. Prior to joining the Public Defender Association, Aaron had a 15-year career in community journalism with an emphasis on social justice, homelessness, and equity. He worked around Oregon, Washington, including as a reporter and editor for Real Change Homeless Empowerment Project and the South Seattle Emerald. Welcome, Aaron. We're excited to hear a little bit more about LEAD and how it can help us reduce crime in our community. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for having me. I'm really glad to be here and talk with you. I'm especially appreciative for Chief Bowe and Cassandra for teeing up this, what I get to talk with you about so well, because they really do connect. Cassandra, I wrote down as soon as you started your talk, the line, "We are all on our own wellness journey." And that's really a lot about what our program is about, is meeting people where they are at on their wellness journey and walking with them toward what their goals are. So thank you, Andrea, for the introduction. I don't have to tell you much more about myself, other than I really am excited to, Burien is my home. And that's what one of the biggest things I love about this work is that that this is my community that I get to work on. So the LEAD program is a partnership and coordination effort between social services, the courts, law enforcement, and the community to take people who are in need of services and who are having an impact on the community because of the behaviors that they're exhibiting and low-level crimes that they're engaged in, and people who have been kind of traditionally managed the way Chief Bowe just discussed by the criminal justice system, and finding a way to redirect those individuals away from systems that aren't working for them, and ideally in a way that we can address the behaviors that they're dealing with and getting them into services and supports. So it's really important. I like to kind of dispel a couple quick myths about the program from the get-go. One is we're often described as a homelessness program, and we're not. We are a public safety program, in where quite a few, most of our clients are experiencing homelessness or have. The distinction is really important because what we're addressing is the low-level crimes and the impact that the individual is having related to what their experiences are and their behavioral health challenges are, rather than simply finding someone who's living outdoors and applying our approach to what's going on with them. So a good way to think about it is somebody who's housed but is having these impacts and engaging in low-level crimes and having an impact on the community in this way would be eligible for the LEAD program. But if someone was living outdoors, but they really weren't having an impact in that way, they weren't engaged with the criminal justice system, they didn't have law violations that they were mounting up, though that individual would not necessarily be appropriate for us. To be a LEAD client, we're really looking at three things. It's somebody, and all three things, not just one of, but these three things. They are dealing with a behavioral health challenge of some kind, either a mental illness or a drug use disorder. The second is that they are engaged in the legal system. Lots of contact with police officers, warrants, ongoing cases, things like that, engagement on all levels of the legal system. Or I should say at any level of the legal system would be what we're looking for. And that these things are stemming from their experience of living in extreme poverty. So I'm moving a little bit faster because I want to make sure we leave time for Q&As. The commonality that for the client is really exactly what Chief Bowe described at the end of his presentation. These are individuals for whom the standard arrest, charge, sentence, and release approach has not been working. And we want to see the needle moving for them and get them into a better spot. So people come into our program basically through one of two ways. Most often in Burien, it's simply the crime reduction unit that Chief Bowe was talking about a little bit ago. Either comes to one of our meetings or shoots an email and says, I've got this individual and I think that they would be a good candidate. This is what we're dealing with. This is what they're doing. These are the behaviors that they've been exhibiting, et cetera. Got an email from the crime reduction unit just today with exactly that rundown. Here's his name, here's his date of birth. This is what's going on. This is why we think he could use some support. Once we've kind of identified and determined is a good fit for the program, I apologize, I skipped past a little bit. The other moment that they can do is at the point of arrest. They do have the ability, if they need call a case manager to come out immediately, they're at the point of arrest, we need someone to come out right now and meet with this person. That's another avenue through which somebody can come into the program. Those who are brought in at the point of the arrest have the ability to divert that charge, not previous charges and not later charges, but just that charge if they do get signed up for the program. Once there, they get paired with a case manager. They do some paperwork, they get a full rundown of their needs, their diagnoses, the services that they may be receiving or they might be missing, what are the gaps and things like that. And they continue, and the case managers start to do the work that they need to do together to help the individual achieve their goals that they are seeking, because it's very client driven as to what are they trying to accomplish. Are they trying to get into housing? Is that their priority? Are they working towards employment? Are they working towards treatment or whatever it is? For some people, they may not even be at that space right now, but they've got some other goal that they're talking about that we can start to work with them all. Case managers are joining them, helping them get to their medical appointments, joining them at court hearings, helping them work to quash warrants, getting state ID cards, getting social security cards, filling out housing applications, determining like what little things are do they need to stop engaging in the behaviors that they have been that's been causing so much trouble. They're doing this ongoingly from a harm reduction viewpoint. And so that is meeting the client where they're at and trying to figure out, we're not going to solve every single problem under the sky for that individual. That person may come in and their goal might be housing, but there might be a number of steps that they need to take to get to that point. One example that I was aware of that I got to observe some conversation about was a woman who was living outdoors, had some behavioral health issues. They were trying to work on treatment. They were looking at like housing and shelter options, things like that, not all going anywhere. But then this case manager noticed that she had this really uncomfortable rash that needed to be dealt with and was like, hey, can we work on that? And it can be in the terms of looking at how crimes that someone is committing that they are using to meet needs and trying to come up with like, what are other ways that we can get that for you? In one case here in Burien, it was someone who was pushing a shopping cart around, overflowing with things, leaving it in places, and it was causing a lot of conflicts with businesses. Case managers found a storage unit for them to hold their stuff. So trying to just do creative thinking. The secret sauce of this is what the operational work group. This is the moment twice a month when Chief Bowe's crime reduction unit and myself and some of my colleagues from the organization that I work for that does the project management, Public Defender Association, the case managers, the prosecuting attorneys all get together and they're just talking about clients and collaborating and trying to figure out what's going on. So who's seen Aaron? Where's he been at lately? I haven't seen him. I've been trying to get a hold of him. Has law enforcement seen him? We haven't. We've been looking for him, but oh, you saw him down at the Safeway. Okay, well, when is he usually there? People asking, checking in, why isn't, I thought we were going to get going on housing. What's going on with that? Where's the status on the housing application that they were in? What are we going to do about when Aaron gets into trouble and this, this is creating a lot of conflict with businesses. What can we do? Can a case manager go talk and help them understand what's going on that is creating these conflicts? this happens in that meeting, but then it happens ongoingly. In Burien, I'm really just impressed with how in regular communication, case managers have been able to be, and with everyone with each other on what is going on with clients on a day-to-day basis, so that they can kind of continue to support people and help people get connected with their case managers and take those steps that they need. This is a approach that has been studied. UW Research has looked at it, 2 studies in 2017, peer-reviewed studies, and just a couple examples of the results of those. People in the LEAD program, 58% lower odds of arrest, 39% lower odds of felony charges in the long term for them. People engaging in the program are more likely to be housed and sheltered, the more engagement that they have with the case manager. So that was looking at the more the case managers and that client are getting together, the more they're able to do that. And then clients were 33% more likely to be connected to income and benefits from being on the program. So there's lots more I could talk about that. I can save it for questions. The one thing I just did want to note really quickly, and I apologize because normally there's a chat and I put my email in there. So I'll ask Andrea maybe if there's a way for me to put my email address there. Is we are hosting and doing outreach with businesses right now. And we do have an opportunity next Wednesday afternoon. If businesses want to come and talk specifically about what they are seeing at their locations and the things that they are dealing with, we'll have an opportunity to do that for some further conversation, which is the other way you can find out about it is because we've been hosting it with the support, much thanks to Transform Burien. If you go to the Transform Burien Facebook page, you'll see the information to be able to log in there.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much, Aaron. And you have a friend, Melody Garcia, who's here, who put your email into the chat there as well, so people can get in touch with you. So the Q&A is now open. So any questions for our panelists? I do want to start off with, kind of that larger question, which I think is probably directed more towards Chief Bowe, which is kind of the impetus for us even hosting this event today, which is a lot of our Burien business owners have, just expressed a lot of frustration that they're not even reporting crime anymore, right? So a crime happens, they're so frustrated that they don't think that it even matters to continue to report it. They fix the issue on their own and just kind of go along their day, right? It's a frustration that they just kind of build into their day to know that they're going to have to deal with some of these issues. What can you tell our business owners who are frustrated with, that how to report and how to get a response, and maybe just why is reporting crime, even if it is something that maybe you just handle on your own, right? My car got broken into again and the window's broken. Well, I guess I just have to go get it fixed again, right? Why is it so important to report that crime when it happens?
Well, I thank you for the question. And a lot of this goes to kind of what Aaron was just talking about, this collaborative work where if we have people who are in our community and committing crimes, a lot of times we don't know about it. We don't know who they are. And there's this perception that we kind of have this all-knowing knowledge of everything going on in the community. And the reality is you have 4 or 5 cops working in your community and oftentimes on calls for service and doing other things. So when you're seeing things, we need you to be our eyes and to be reporting these things. And we look at our trends. I look at that call mapping that I put up and say, okay, where are things going on? What's causing them? What type of crime issues are we having? It's important that we have that data and statistics so that we can get a picture of what's going on in our community. I fully understand that people get frustrated because there isn't an instant solution sometimes. There isn't I call it the easy button, right? There isn't always an easy button. It's part of why during this presentation I talked about the crime prevention. What can you do to help reduce the crime? How can we work together on that? How can you be our eyes and ears and call us and get us there? And then, the things that we're trying to do in direct response to the business owner's request here is, get people out on foot, walking around downtown Burien, get officers on bicycles. I had several people mention that they've noticed that distinctly change in the last few weeks now that we've had officers down there. Thursday afternoons or Thursday mornings, having a storefront officer, so you have a single point of contact through Discover Burien, particularly during the farmers market. we do have the ability with our crime reduction unit to really focus not only the police resources, but depending on what the issues that you're having, a lot of times we can really work with Aaron and his team as well. And they can start working on the front end. We like to work upstream of a crime if we can. So if you're starting to see things that are causing issues that are concerning that you want help with, by engaging our outreach components ahead of time, sometimes we can address those issues before they ever hit the criminal justice system as well. So all of these things are kind of factors in this collective public safety world that we live in. I certainly would love to say that I could deliver a zero crime community to you. We aren't there. That's going to take a lot of time and a lot of work to get there. But I also think that there is the perspective as you look at some of the data that comes out that we also aren't the worst crime community out there either. Like having that perception is important. Their perspective is important.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chief Bowe. Appreciate that. I'm going to go to one of our attendees who typed a question into the Q&A function on Zoom. And I'll just maybe ask for you, Chief Bowe, to expand on this a little bit, because I think, again, it goes into the question about how we can increase our resources so that perhaps this foot patrol that has been expanded through the summer, could continue, right? And so this question is, according to the 2019 strategic plan, there were 2 more officers budgeted. Did that happen? And then the tag onto that is, how do we find the resources to staff at the levels that we need to staff at?
Well, I think those are questions for the council, not for your chief of police. The reality is our allocations and our staffing are set based on our budget and our ability to afford it. And we have to be realistic about what we can afford in the city. And I will say it's one of the areas where I've really strived in the last years to say, okay, we know we have financial limitations in the city. What can we bring in to support us? And how can we get programs like LEAD in the city that is King County mid-funded and King County general funded for the next 2 years, 2-point-some-odd million for the program across Burien and White Center. So recognizing that sometimes we can draw resources in that support your police department on the peripheral is an important thing that we've been able to do. But the actual staffing numbers, as far as how many we staff, is based on the budget allocation to the sheriff's office and how much we want to pay. It's an a la carte contract. So we can have 25 officers or 200 officers, but we got to be able to pay for them. And that's the real key, is they have to be able to pay for them, part of the discussion.
Perfect. And were we able to hire those 2 officers, or maybe you answered this a little bit in your presentation that maybe we have the budget, but there's still a shortage, or there's still some vacancies?
I've been here for 3 years. We haven't added an officer in the time I've been here.
Great, thank you so much. Another question from one of our attendees. They're a resident of Burien Town Square condos, and there have been some intrusions there over the years. They have some security cameras. Recently, they experienced an intrusion. They were able to clearly identify the individual from the camera, called 911, the police arrived, and they could be seen having a conversation with the person who was identified from the footage, but that person was not arrested. So is security footage helpful in the arrest of property crime break-ins?
Yes, and I don't know the exact circumstances, but I think one of the things that we have an expectation is the only police action is either you go to jail or you don't go to jail. There are lots of options in the police capabilities, including if it's a misdemeanor crime, somebody trespassing, somebody unlawfully entered your space, it would be trespassing, which is a gross misdemeanor crime. We are encouraged, when it's appropriate, not to make that as a physical arrest booking, but rather to make that a case where we refer it to the prosecutor. They have to appear in court. As long as we have good address and good contact information, they don't have a history of failure to appear or having warrants. A lot of times that's not going to be a booking in the night, but that doesn't mean that there's no action on that event. There still is a criminal charge that is generated out of that event. So I always use caution, without me doing some research on a specific event, with saying nothing happened or they didn't arrest him or they didn't. That's not always the case. A lot of times an arrest is more of a paper process for people who don't have extensive criminal history. And when we're dealing with property crimes, that's very common in our system. Certainly under COVID, misdemeanor crimes, we own SCORE, which gives us pretty good capacity, but some of the King County restrictions on booking are to avoid booking on certain levels of crimes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Our next question, directed more to Cassandra and Aaron. Can you both talk about how a citizen who is open to having conversations with the homeless, we share our spaces with, like in Town Square Park that we just mentioned, can engage with those less fortunate, and what that could mean to them, especially during this time? And then what steps would one take if they would be willing to accept some services and help?
Do you want, I have some ideas, Cassandra. I wasn't sure if you looked like you were reaching for your mouth, so I didn't want to step on you. I think that's a really great question. And what you're talking about speaks to something I just want to highlight, which is that I came, you heard me kind of give you like the really clear definition of what our clients are and how it's not a homelessness program. Homelessness is much broader than that. One of the things people don't realize is that one of the largest subsections of homelessness is single parents with children. And so there's a lot of conversations that could be had there. I would myself highlight a catchphrase that was started by a friend of mine who I met doing work in journalism. He started an organization called Facing Homelessness. His name is Rex Holbein. He's in Seattle, and his catchphrase is just to say hello. And the idea is that obviously you're not going to be able to just sit down with someone and like within 5 minutes be like, let me solve your life. Like I'm just gonna, like everyone, we have to get to know each other first. No one wants, like none of us want to have anyone up in our business like that. I think what you're talking about when you're talking about seeing people, if you see someone you're comfortable saying hello to, you start with that early saying hello. That's today. Just hi, how are you doing? And then you say hello. And then if you see someone again, maybe say hi, my name's Aaron. And it takes a step further than that just to see what kind of engagement and how much does someone want to hear from you. Because you want to, I guess it's because we kind of have a harm reduction approach. We don't just run in and give people all of the solutions all at once. You have to build a relationship with them. If you ever get a chance to run into Burien's human services director, I would talk with her about it too, because she is always, whenever we're talking about her clients, she's like, oh yeah, I saw him the other day and we talked the other night about this and this and that and everything. And so she's had a really good way of kind of approaching people and chatting people and being in conversation. But I think the Rex Holbein, and please go look that up, Facing Homelessness. It's a good resource for, I think, people thinking about things the way you are, about wanting to be in relationship and learn a little bit more about that.
I agree with what Aaron said, is that, the first step is just saying hello. Take a slow path, because just like you are reticent, that person you're saying hello to may be reticent of you. They don't know what your motivations are. So they want to be careful as well. So say hello. The next time, my name is Cassandra, what's your name? And see how they respond. And then you go from there. But I would take it slow, not rush and try to help the person and solve all their problems at one chance. Our homeless outreach staff, that's how they approach our homeless clients. They start by saying hello. They see them again. They may offer them coffee. They may say, this is my name, but it's a slow process.
I'd add to this also, that's just your interactions on the street. You also might want to check in with like Transform Burien, contact Reverend Jenny Parch over at Highline United Methodist, find out like what are the organizations, like if you're not already tapped in with them, but like what are those organizations that are kind of already in, developing relationships with the population and going about it that way as well.
Perfect. Thank you both so much. Next question, we touched on it a little bit, Chief Bowe, talking about security cameras. And, again, yes, they are good and can be very effective tools. But what other steps should business owners take to protect their customers, employees, and property? In addition to, you mentioned in your presentation, lights, security cameras, what else?
Right, security cameras are a good thing for documenting things after they've occurred. Security cameras are not a preventative item for the most part. Obviously, you can have signs that say cameras in use and that kind of thing, but the actual camera from a law enforcement lens is actually for after the event. Things that are really effective, the research is super clear. Making eye contact, acknowledging somebody, saying hi is a huge factor for a business. One of the things that we've seen is being distracted, like going to the back room, leaving the till unattended while you're dealing with another customer. Those kind of things have led to thefts in our community. And by unattended, I mean unattended and open, getting distracted away from cash on the counter. A lot of crimes are crimes of opportunity, where you have somebody in an environment who sees an opportunity and takes it, not necessarily somebody who intended to commit a crime when they walked into a business. And that's where you really look at some of those things, like not leaving your purse in the front of the house. Make sure your purse is in a storage room locked up. In your vehicles, we see it all through the Christmas season. If you leave all your packages in your vehicles and then go to the store, it's a crime of opportunity when you see that brand new cell phone and that brand new fancy matching watch sitting in the car. It often will lead to somebody breaking the window. So those are some ideas that you can look at. Certainly, anytime you're uncomfortable, we get paid by the hour to come by your business and say hi. So if something's going on and you want us to do an area check, you can certainly call and have an officer do an area check. We talked about the resource limitations earlier. It's entirely likely that we aren't going to be there in 2 minutes, but we would rather drive by and know that you want us to drive by than not know that you're feeling uncomfortable. Trust your instincts. Something makes you feel uncomfortable. That's your psychological, your brain working in the background, and something's making you uncomfortable. Trust your instincts that there's something there that you're reacting to, and be conscious of it and listen to yourself. And those are some ideas on the crime prevention front. We also have 3 officers in our city who have been trained in what's called crime prevention through environmental design, which is a system of creating an environment that is less likely to nurture criminal behaviors. And they can come out and do an analysis of your business, and they're more than glad to do that, and make a series of simple recommendations that will help to reduce crime. Sometimes it's things like line of sight. We did what's called a SEPTED review for the Safeway complex at 148th and First, and some of the things were increased lighting and trimming their bushes so that they didn't have big blind spots behind the bushes, and things like where they put cart returns in their parking lot, or where they put dumpsters, and moving them so you had line of sights improved. So a lot of times we can do some work through SEPTED as well to support you.
Perfect, great. And I think one of the things that you mentioned, Chief Bowe, is just that awareness, right? And Cassandra, that goes a little bit back to, your presentation, which is, if you're distracted, if you're not, paying attention, you might not be listening to that gut feeling, which is like, ooh, this isn't a good situation. And so how important that is just to be aware and be within yourself, be mindful. So appreciate that feedback. Another question more about graffiti and then kind of petty crime and property crime. Chief Bowe, you mentioned that property crime was up. What should a business owner do if their property has been tagged by graffiti? Are there things a business owner can do to help prevent the tagging? And what happens when a petty criminal, is caught? Are those crimes still prosecuted?
Yeah, so to start with the broken windows theory on graffiti, clean it up immediately. Take a picture of it and get it cleaned up as soon as possible. The city does have a graffiti removal program that will help you with materials and paint. And I can put the link to that in the message here, but there is a program in the city to help and support you in making those cleanups. But yeah, please get it cleaned up as soon as possible. if you catch somebody, it is an arrestable crime. Certainly we had some influence or some increase in graffiti last summer that we identified 1 or 2 people who were behind it. They were arrested and it stopped it. This is also a good place for the reporting component. We have a lot of relationships within our community, and a lot of graffiti is pretty identifiable as far as who's doing it. Sometimes those relationships are very beneficial, and having a talk with somebody about having knowledge who's doing it, even if we can't arrest them on it, and encouraging them to not do said behavior. So there's certainly some opportunity there to do some intervention as well, even if we can't make an arrest on that particular violation. So certainly report it and get it cleaned up as soon as you can. As far as prosecution for misdemeanor level crimes, there's a twofold answer to this. We absolutely have the ability to arrest and book into SCORE, which is our the South County Jail, for which Burien is one of the owner cities on. We have a municipal prosecutor who files our misdemeanor charges. There is definitely restrictions in place in the court system that has resulted in a large backlog on misdemeanor level crimes. And the prioritization is domestic violence is first, driving under the influence is second, and then crimes against person are third. So just understand that there's a possibility that it gets queued up and that there's not an immediate court solution, but rather it's in the queue when the courts reopen to full capacity. So we are at online court capacity limits right now in misdemeanor court.
Perfect.
Oh,
Great.
and thank you to whoever put the link up there. Thank you, Lorraine.
Awesome. This is probably a little bit more directed toward Aaron and you, Chief Bowe. How many Burien lead officers are out there on a daily basis? And, you know, what are their specialties? And, you know, in general, you know, how is the program working out here, or how are we measuring success?
You don't have Burien lead officers, going back to our staffing limitations. We have 3 detectives that we have placed in a crime reduction unit that work collaboratively on a whole laundry list of programs. It's not simply lead. Lead is one of the programs that they work on, but they do work on this collaboration for underlying causes of crimes. They also are the ones that go do badges and barbells and work out with the youth in school. And they also are the same officers that go to the daycares and read books. There's 3 officers who work on all this programming related to prevention and intervention side of criminal behaviors. So with that said, there's 3 officers that work in this work. There are 3 detectives that work in this work. One of the things that's amazing about the idea of lead, or the idea of really any of our collaborative programs, is that you don't see the successes per se. And sometimes it's hard to tell you about the successes because we don't like telling you people's life story that are really, quite frankly, not the public's business. There are a lot of people who are now in housed situations that were in our community a year ago. There's a lot of people that had a lot of criminal justice engagement, and we've been able to get them out of that criminal justice engagement. And one of my favorite stories, because everybody knows it, is y'all used to call me every single day about all of the garbage that was out in front of Kennedy High School on the corner of First Avenue and 143rd. And it was actually lead that was able to get the individual who was putting all that stuff out there. They got him a storage unit. And it was such a simple and obvious thing, but he started keeping all of his stuff in a storage unit instead of at 143rd and First. Y'all quit calling me. He still was in our community for 8 months before we got him housed. There was another 8-month window when we were working with him, but there was no more calls to the police. We were now working with them without the police interaction. And Aaron and his team over the course of 8 months got him housed. And I think he is now also sober and housed, if I recall correctly. So he is. So a lot of times all you recognize is, I don't see that pile of trash at 143rd and First anymore. But what's actually happened is lead has done some amazing work in the background to start reducing the harm on the community. Then they started reducing the harm on the individual and started working on his addiction and other issues. So to say, how is it working? There's a lot of people who are not in our community right now in the criminal justice realm, but are in our community as far as in the production realm. And the analytics are pretty good. It's a 58% reduction in recidivism in the criminal justice system. That is a better recidivism impact than me booking you in jail on shoplifting. That's the reality of it. It is more effective than a booking for shoplifting is on changing behavior, particularly when the driver of behavior is behavioral health.
I'll add that in addition to the crime reduction unit officers that work so closely with the program, that REACH has a team of 6 people. One of them is doing some of their work in West Seattle as well, so that one of them is sharing their time with West Seattle. But a team of 6 people who are case managers and outreach and outreach engagement, connecting with finding and connecting with the clients, seeking them out directly so that we can get them connected with a case manager that are working with them. We have about 50 people who are active clients. We have about 50 more who are individuals who've been referred to the program, but we haven't been able to get them. All of the intake and paperwork and interviewing that goes into getting them onto the program yet, or some of them just haven't been able to engage at all. It's not a coercive program. They have to agree to work with us. And then in terms of successes, it varies how you measure that, just like Sheepo was saying, and a lot of it is the success is invisible because it's simply not in front of you anymore. We've had since the beginning of the year, we've gotten 3 people into housing, like supportive housing, not shelter, and that's been really huge. It's incredibly difficult to find housing for people, especially people who lived in the Highline area for years and are trying to find and be able to maintain their life here just the way I am. And so we've had successes in those. We've had a number of individuals that I can say are generating like few to zero 911 calls anymore, who are generating them all the time. But I think my favorite anecdote that I got from an officer earlier this year, or last year, was just talking about how they see individuals engage in the public. And in this case, it was someone that the crime reduction unit knew really well, seeing time after time after time. And they saw it, they just happened to see, they were trying to cross the street and a car came up and came too close and had to slam on the brakes and just came within inches of the client. And he kind of looked startled, jumped back, and kept walking. And they said he would have punched that car a year ago. It would have been a completely different, like they would have been called in, it would have been like a whole thing. And so in a lot of ways, some of the best successes that we see are people that we haven't gotten them, into the housing yet because it's hard to get housing, or we haven't achieved every goal that they're looking to achieve, but they have a better relationship with the community. And that's really valuable as well. And so just a couple of things that I would highlight.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I know we're getting short on time. We do have 2 questions from the attendees I want to get to. So if we're okay, just going a little bit past 8:30. Perfect. Thank you. The first question is, would you say that the homeless issue is the largest change for law enforcement over the last 3 years in Burien?
I assume that question is for me.
Yes, thank you.
When we say the largest change, I would say it's the most energy that we have put into working on a problem. And I'm actually really proud of where we're at. I know that it's not perfect. I know that there's still homeless in our community and people who who've been around a long time, and to some people are a thorn in their side, and I get it. That said, there has been a lot of progress. The other day, the crime reduction unit told me it's over 40 people have ended up housed as a result of their work. And while I can't give you the names, I guarantee that those are 40 people that you would recognize if they all came back to Burien tomorrow. That's the impact a lot of times you don't see. And I know if I go back 3 years ago and think of spaces like behind the skate park at the old annex property, and the number of people that were living on that property and the amount of complaints we were getting related to that property, I actually think we've made great strides. And one can accuse me of having rosy eyeglasses on, and I get that, but it's not a perfect solution. It's not a zero homelessness community because we've solved all the problems, but I think we're holding our own. And I think that is a testament to Colleen, who is not able to be here tonight because she's on vacation, but your human services manager, she works her backside off for y'all, and it's on sometimes done in the background, but she is an amazing partner to me and somebody who really supports this collaborative work. I can't say enough about organizations like LEAD and Evergreen Treatment Services, or REACH, who we partner with. Sound, Navos, all these people are working in our community to try to really look at this team sport approach to public safety. These are all public safety issues. They're not mental health issues. They're not substance issues. They're public safety issues. We're all partners in this work. So, and I have to give a shout out. I am absolutely humbled and in awe at the men and women that work in the city. They wear this uniform. They go out and work and work and work. And because we're contract partners with the sheriff's office, they don't have to be here. They can work in any community within King County, and they choose to be here despite it being the busiest city in King County, and they're going to work their backsides off, and they know it, and they do it because they love y'all. So I'm in awe of the officers that work in the city and what they do with the resources they have. So that's my big long story to say. I think it's not perfect, but I think we're working really hard at it, and I will absolutely continue to do everything in my power to work on these collective issues.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chief Bowe. Last question, just really quickly before we wrap up. Mail theft, certainly, is an issue, not just in our community, but everywhere. Does the Burien Police Department work with the Postal Police?
Yep, absolutely. So we work with the postal inspector regularly. We do several investigations with them. And if it's individual mail theft, we'll deal with it on the local level. But if it's a large ring, we actually will refer it to them and they'll file it through the federal system. They also, every year we do surprise packages, which are fake packages that we drop on people's mailboxes that have a motion sensor in them. And as soon as you move them, it triggers an alert and a GPS system inside of there. And then we swoop in and arrest you. So we have done that project with them the last 3 years with the secret packages, and it's a fake Amazon box on a door, but hopefully people at least think for a moment that one of those Amazon boxes is being monitored. That's a partnership as well with the Postal Inspector and Amazon.
Perfect. Great. Again, thank you so much to our speakers, Cassandra with Sound, Chief Bowe with Burien Police Department, and Aaron with LEAD. And of course, thank you, all of our attendees, for making the time to be with us here today, connecting and convening on the issues impacting our community and working in collaboration to solution find is central to our work here at the Chamber. And we really appreciate your engagement and your support. If there is anything the Chamber can do for you, please do not hesitate to reach out. Please remember that this is the start of the conversation. We hope that you will join us for more roundtables and discussions that we plan to host throughout the rest of the year to help us continue to advocate for the solution that our community needs. Stronger together, really appreciate it. Thank you all so much. Have a great night. Take care.